Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Helen Helmuth, and I'm a voting access advocate at Disability Rights New York. Today, I'm going to talk with you all about how to vote safely in New York State, the different options that voters have in 2020 to cast their ballot, best practices, and how to report accessibility barriers. I'm going to start by sharing with you all the process of voting by an absentee ballot, which you may also hear referred to in the media and on the news as voting by mail. Everyone in New York State is able to vote using an absentee ballot for the November 2020 election. In fact, all voters are eligible to vote by absentee ballot through January 1 of 2022. The term temporary illness has been expanded to include the risk of contracting or spreading a disease that may cause illness to a voter or other members of the public. So potential spread of COVID falls within temporary illness up through January 1 of 2020. You must request an absentee ballot if this is how you would like to cast your vote. And the deadline to do so is Friday, October 27. However, the big asterisk next to it, the State Board of Elections has written on their website that the United States Postal Service, or USPS, has stated that they cannot guarantee delivery of a ballot that is requested less than 15 days prior to the election, which is October 19. So although the deadline, according to the State Board of Elections, to request an absentee ballot is October 27, USPS is saying they can't guarantee delivery of a ballot that's requested after October 19, which what I will say to you all is request your ballot early. If you know you want to vote by mail, or even if you think you might want to vote by mail, request your ballot as soon as possible. And there are several ways that you're able to do that. The first, and what I find the simplest way, is using the State Board of Elections online portal. So if you visit absenteeballot.elections.ny.gov, you're able to type in your name, zip code, date of birth to confirm your voter registration, and then the County Board of Elections office will mail you your absentee ballot. Filling out this, requesting an absentee ballot on this portal, there's no signature required. You just check a box confirming that you are who you say that you are, and they use the information that you provided to confirm your voter registration status. Another really important thing to keep in mind is many voters voted using absentee ballots for the first time for the June 2020 primary election. You must re-request an absentee ballot if you checked temporary illness as the reason for voting via absentee in June. Now, let me say that again. If you voted using an absentee ballot in June, you must re-request an absentee ballot for November. You may also, if you are a person with a visual disability or print disability, or for whatever other disability-related reason you're unable to independently mark a paper ballot, you can request an accessible absentee ballot. And the deadline to request this is Friday, October 27. You request the ballot very similar to how you request the traditional absentee ballot. You visit the portal on the State Board of Elections website, absentee-ballot.elections.ny.gov/home/accessible. And the way the accessible absentee ballot works is the County Board of Elections office will email you a state-issued PDF ballot that you are able to mark on your computer using whatever assistive devices you use to operate your computer, whether that be screen reader software or adaptive equipment to allow you to scroll through whatever you need on your computer. There is no signature required to request an accessible absentee ballot if you do so through the portal. And same as the paper absentee ballot, if you used an accessible absentee ballot for the first time in June 2020 for the primary election, you must re-request the accessible absentee ballot for November. A few other ways that you can request an absentee ballot if you're not feeling the portal route. You can email, call, fax, or postal mail your County Board of Elections office a absentee ballot application, which can be found on the State Board of Elections website. And you can also request an absentee ballot in person at your State Board of Elections office up until November 1. Now, if you choose to request your absentee ballot in this manner, you will need to physically sign the absentee ballot application. Returning your absentee ballot. So it's either been mailed to you and you filled it out by hand, or you got the accessible ballot and you filled it out on the computer. What do you do next? You then must either mail your completed ballot to the County Board of Elections office, and it must be postmarked by November 3. The County Board of Elections office will not provide return postage. So let's go over that first bulleted section for a minute. The postmark must be by November 3, which basically means to be mindful of the USPS collection times. If you choose to return your ballot in one of the blue USPS collection bins, make sure that the mail hasn't been picked up for that day already if you drop it in there on November 3, because if it had already been collected for the day, then it won't be postmarked until November 4. And regarding return postage, for the June election, all County Board of Elections offices were required to mail all eligible voters absentee ballot applications, and if the voters chose to vote that way, the County Board of Elections office was also required to provide them a stamped return envelope for their ballot. They no longer need to provide a stamped envelope for return. They will send you an envelope, it just won't have postage on it. You may also hand deliver your completed absentee ballot to your County Board of Elections office anytime now up until Election Day. And these last two return methods are new this year for this election. You can drop your completed absentee ballot off at any early polling place between October 24 and November 1. And in a couple of slides, we'll go over how to find the early polling places in your county. And you can also drop off the completed ballot at any polling place in your county on Election Day, which is November 3. A few best practices, as I've already made clear, be sure to request your absentee ballot early. If you request your ballot and you don't hear from the County Board of Elections within a reasonable amount of time, say 2 weeks or so, reach out to them to make sure that they received your application and that they're processing it. Once you receive your absentee ballot, complete it early and return it early. Again, just to avoid any confusion or any anxiety regarding having it returned and being counted. And make sure that the return envelope has the correct postage. Now we're going to go over early voting. Early voting is new just last year, and I'm always surprised when I give presentations how many people aren't aware of this system, and it's such a great system, so we're going to go over it. Early voting means that select polling places for select hours are open 10 days prior to the election, so from October 24 to November 1. You can find the early polling locations and hours in your county by visiting ny.gov/early voting. You can vote at any early polling place in your county. So unlike on election day, when you must go to your assigned polling place, you can vote at any early polling location. Inherently, you avoid lines because the voting process is spread out over a longer period of time. So it's not everyone rushing to get to the polls before or after work on this one single day. You have 10 days or 9 days rather to get out there and vote, and it avoids lines, avoids the crowd, and it makes it go by quicker. You can decide to vote early even if you requested an absentee ballot. So say that you requested an absentee ballot and you hadn't received it and you were starting to get nervous and anxious and you're like, I need to go vote, but I don't have my ballot. You can still go and vote early or on election day. The way New York State system is set up is before counting any absentee ballots, the Board of Elections reviews all of their poll books to see who went to the polls on election day and who cast a ballot. And the ballots cast in person are counted. And if you are a person who requested an absentee ballot but decided to vote in person, they would just spoil your absentee ballot that you didn't fill out. And as always, with everywhere in New York State right now, poll workers and voters must all wear masks. Some best practices for early voting. Check your County Board of Elections website or that website referred to on the previous slide to verify the closest early polling location to you. Because you don't need to go to a specifically assigned polling place, it allows for a lot of flexibility. If you want to stop at the polls on your way to work or on your way home from work, you can do that. Whichever one is closest to your work. It doesn't need to necessarily be the one closest to your home. Standard best practices, again, we all are aware of these things, however many months into quarantine and social distancing. Be sure to wash your hands before going to the polls, and then once you leave, bring your own pen just to avoid having to touch one that someone else may have touched. Don't panic if you forget a pen because the poll workers will have one. Just best practice to bring your own if you're thinking ahead. Always have a mask. Try and go at an off-peak hour to avoid the crowds. But as I mentioned at the top of the early voting section, inherently early voting in its entirety is an off-peak hour. So just voting early, you're going to come into contact with less people. And if you have any more questions, your County Board of Elections office would be able to help you out with that. Lastly, election day voting, which most of us are used to, but we will be sure to go over it. On election day this year is November 3. It's a Tuesday, and all polls across the state are open from 9 a.m. are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. You must go to your assigned polling place if you choose to vote on election day. And you can find your polling place by visiting voterlookup.elections.ny.gov. Poll workers and voters will all be wearing masks. And same as early voting, if you requested an absentee ballot but didn't receive it, you can still go and vote in person. Or if you requested an absentee ballot and then you decide you wanted to vote in person instead, you can still do that. Traveling to the polls on election day or during early voting is what the title should say. If you know that you are someone who's going to need a ride to the polls, start thinking now. Reach out to your family, your friends, your neighbors to see if you can arrange a ride to the polls. I actually saw on the Nextdoor website in my area, a person posted that they would help people get to the polls if they needed a ride. They said, this is a nonpartisan effort. I just want to be neighborly and help. So if you don't have friends or family in the area, look at your local neighborhood websites or web pages and see if there's someone there. You can also contact your independent living center and see if they know of any resources. Sometimes they'll have programs to help people get to the polls. And of course, ride sharing services like Uber and Lyft. This year they announced that they're going to do the second time they've done it, they're giving a 50% discount to the polls. It's not round trip because there's some potential legality issues with them providing a good or service to you because you voted. So it's only rides to the polls, but it's a 50% voucher for up to $10 for Lyft. If you're interested in learning more about either of those programs, feel free to reach out to me. I may be able to help out or check the Uber and Lyft websites. Unfortunately, we live in an imperfect world, and although all polling places are supposed to be accessible, sometimes they are not. So we're going to go over a couple of ways to report accessibility barriers, depending on the type of barrier that you see. For barriers on election day, immediate barriers that need to be remedied, you can call the Election Protection Hotline at 866-687-8683. The first example that comes to my mind is if someone goes up to the sign-in table and the poll worker tells them that their name isn't in the poll book. You may call Election Protection Hotline and ask for their help. A solution to that problem, I'm just going to throw this in here, is you can always ask for a provisional ballot. So if you get to the sign-in table and your name isn't in the book for whatever reason, you can ask for a provisional ballot, fill it out, and the ballot isn't immediately cast and counted. Instead, the Board of Elections takes your ballot, goes back to their office, verifies your voter registration status, and if it's all correct, they will then count your ballot. You may also contact the Attorney General's office. There's a complaint form online at ag.ny.gov/election-hotline. And although the link is slightly misleading because it says hotline, it's more of a complaint form. And if you're interested in filing an AG's complaint, you can contact DRNY and you're happy to help you out with that. You may also file a HAVA, or Help America Vote Act, administrative complaint. And HAVA complaints are filed when there's been a violation of Title III of the Help America Vote Act. And Title III guarantees all voters the right to a private and independent vote, including mail-in voting. It requires the County Board of Elections office to address inaccessibility with State Board of Elections oversight. There is a hearing process, and it creates a public record of grievances, which provides a track record and paper trail for long-term systemic advocacy. So if you go to the polls and somehow your right to a private and independent vote was compromised, for example, the accessible voting machine, also known as the ballot marking device, was not working, or it was turned off, or there was a malfunction, or a poll worker said that you weren't allowed to use the machine for whatever reason, those are all potential HAVA complaints. And if you're interested, if you run into an issue and you want to file a HAVA complaint, you can contact DRNY. We filed several of these. We've represented many clients on in this complaint process, so we're very familiar with it. And of course, you can always contact Disability Rights New York. If we're the only person that you can think of, we'll be able to point you in the right direction or give you ideas of what avenues you can take for addressing your concerns. I'm going to finish off with important dates, so hopefully this sticks. This is what sticks in everyone's mind. October 9 is the last day to register to vote by postal mail. So if you want to mail in a voter registration form, make sure it's done by October 9. October 14 is the last day to register to vote in person. So say you miss October 9, you go, oh my gosh, I'm not registered. What do I do? You can still go to your County Board of Elections office and register in person up until October 14. October 27, there should be a big asterisk there, is the last day to request an absentee ballot. But keep in mind, USPS says that they cannot guarantee delivery of a ballot past October, that's request past October 19. However, one of the things we learned in this presentation is if you request an absentee ballot, but you don't get it, you never receive it, you can still go and vote in person, either during early voting or on election day. And lastly, November 3 is the last day to return your absentee ballot. It must either be postmarked by that date or it must be delivered to any polling place in your county on that day. Have a voting plan in place, make a decision and necessary arrangements, act now. If you know you're going to vote, there's no need to sit on it. Act today and figure out what works best for you and your situation and decide how you want to cast your vote. We're in a very lucky position where we have so many options. We can vote by mail, we can vote early, we can vote on election day. So if you have any questions about any of the ways that you're able to cast your ballot or anything that was discussed during this training, please reach out to me. My name is Helen Helmuth. My direct phone number is 518-512-4927. And my email address is helen.helmuth@drny.org. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.